So this is the chick brooder, and it's homemade. 2 electrical boxes, a switch, the light fixture, the light bulb, and I used an extension cord and just cut off the end of the extension cord. Be sure you cut off the right end because you want the cord to be long enough to get to where you want it to go. I used a porcelain type of fixture because it happens to be what I had. But they do sell these, they're plastic. This one you could put a 660 watt bulb in, so there's no issue with a 100 watt bulb. Anyway, I also used a dimmer switch rather than just a light switch. You could use a light switch. You just will need to monitor the heat and move the lid on or off of the coop as you need to adjust the heat to make sure that they have the right temperature. But this switch I just actually had laying around. I had picked it up at a used store, a thrift store. I'm not going to show you how to do electricity. If you don't know how to wire something, you'll have to find somebody to do it. But the electrical cord goes in. Essentially, that's a clamp. It holds the cord. I always put a knot just in case. I used a drill, and I mounted this electrical box onto a 2x3 piece of wood with screws. Then I put that on the ground and put the box or the plastic tub on top of it, and then centered this electrical box, which is actually an extension box, but it doesn't matter because it's butted right up against to the plastic. But I screwed it into that, through the plastic and into the 2x3. Now, because it's not a fully covered, and even if it were a fully bottom covered box, you'll want to caulk all around that because this is going to get excessively dusty. Now this is what it looks like when it's finished and the light bulb is in. This is just showing you the switch. Now when I put that switch plate on, it's screwed fine into the old electrical box. That's the actual end piece, bottom piece. That's what it looks like. That's what it should look like. I had a little bit of problem putting on the faceplate. I actually had to glue it, and I used caulk to do it because it just didn't work out. I just couldn't use the screws for the faceplate, but it was no big deal. I just put a couple dabs of caulk. But you put the switch on, you feed the wires through. Like I say, if you don't know how to wire it, find somebody that does. But once it's wired up to the light fixture, you want to make sure that you caulk all around. Now I happen to have this black foam that's used for outside fixtures that keeps moisture out. That's okay, but still it's not good enough for dust. The dust and dander from the chicks as they get older is really, really bad. Of course, it depends how long you're going to keep them in the brooder, but also where these screws go on these faceplates, whether you have, on the fixture, whether you have a old one like I had or a new one, you want to caulk inside of there. And when you rig it up, it's tremendously sturdy. I was really quite surprised how sturdy it is. Now, I used metal tape. You can use duct tape if you like, but duct tape I don't really care for because over time it wears out, it gets cracked, and there is some heat and humidity on the inside, but that was metal taping, and it's actual heat tape for heated ducts. But you want to test before you actually caulk it and go through all the problems. Test it, make sure it works. I use the 100 watt bulb only because that I'm about between 60, 62 degrees, and you have to keep the chickens at a little bit above 90, between 90 and 95 degrees, and then drop it down. After the first week, you want to drop it down. You can look that up on the web. But as you can see, there is the sturdiness of it with just that one little 2x3. And here you're going to want to caulk. If you do have the old type of fixture or electrical box, even if you have a new one, these plastic ones, they have all kinds of holes in them. So you definitely need to caulk that all up before you tape it, just to be sure. if you ever need to replace the tape, whether you use duct tape or whatever type of tape you choose to use, it might wear out, so you might have to replace it. So it's better to be sure that you caulk all around in any entrance, because it is going to get highly dusty. Now this worked out very well. I used it, I threw it together in a matter of a few hours. Took me longer gathering up everything and figuring out how I was going to put it together than it did to actually put it together. But once I had all the items and I knew what I would do to mount it, it was quite quick. Now that's where the screw wouldn't go through. I don't know why, but anyway, so I just put some caulk around there and held it with tape and waited overnight until it glued in there. I actually had the chickens in there while I was waiting for it to glue or set. But there's the tape around the outside, and as you can see, I put it up onto the porcelain part of the light fixture. The tape, this type of tape, this metal tape, has extremely good glue, and you can mold it. I didn't do a really good job on taping the inside because it was curved and it was kind of difficult to make it all even and straight. But you can wipe that down with a wet cloth very easily, with a damp cloth, and not, I mean, obviously not when it's plugged in, but I mean when you clean it up. I actually took the chickens out and cleaned this 3 times. I had a lot of chickens in there. I had like 13 chickens, 5 large ones, and the others were Saramas. But that's what it looks like when it's finished. These are dowels, and what I did is I didn't want the chickens to be in direct contact with the light bulb. So I put these screwed holes, obviously, in the plastic. And you have to be careful when you do that. You're kind of seeing it upside down now, but that's because it's sitting on the ground, and I'm looking at the side of it and coming over the top of it. I put dowels. I made them even enough to hold right below the light bulb. Hold that tray right below the light bulb. That is just an old oven tray. This box is 29 inches long, 19 inches wide, and 13 inches deep. You can get them larger. I wouldn't go much smaller because of the light and the heat from the light. You don't want it anywhere near the plastic, and never use the lid. I've seen people use the lid and do cutout and put netting in. You're better off finding another top, which I'll show you later. But this is the eating area. You could use a feed dish. I put in a hook because I use drip type bottles that have nipple feeders on them, because I like to try to train my chickens, but that does take time because you have to show them where the water is and train them how to get the water out of the nipple feeder. But drilling holes in the plastic, it's like this. I used an auger that has a very fine pointed tip, like a very tiny little, screw going in, and I sped it up super, super fast and then pushed it, very gently into the plastic. Now the dowels, otherwise the plastic will crack. Don't push it, because that's what I did the first time, is I cracked it. Plus the little auger drill bit hit that little bend in the plastic. But what I did is I wrapped the ends of the dowels with electrical tape so that they wouldn't push through or fall through. And rather than use a whole lot of electrical tape, I just took a couple little pieces of toothpick, cut them short, and wrapped it around the toothpick next to the dowel, just to be safe, because if the thing happens to get jostled or moved, you don't want that rack falling down on your chickens. So there's the dowels in place, and that's to hold the rack. And there's 2 dowels to hold the actual tray, but there's a third dowel, that one on the top, and I measured it to match exactly to the top of the electrical box, which is metal and it's very sturdy, and that's where I rested the top piece that I used. It just happened to be an old, supposedly a wood carrier. I think it's more for looks, but I put clips on the ends of the dowels so they wouldn't slip through. But I'll show you the old piece of metal that I used to cover the top. Some people just put screening on the top. You could put another metal bake tray on the top. That would probably work. You just have to make sure it doesn't get too hot you do have to monitor these. Put a smoke alarm in the room that you have this in, definitely. I mean, take all precautions, because I don't know how thick of the plastic is that you're going to buy. This is pretty thick, and it took the heat just fine. It's not going to get over 100 degrees, but the light bulb is the issue. So when you're drilling it, that's a good hole. It's taking pictures at an angle. You more or less want that drill to be so high speed that you're melting the plastic rather than actually drilling it like, you know, you're pushing through wood to drill it. That's not what you want to do. And you do want to be able to brace the plastic. You don't just, you know, want to push it, because you'll crack it just like that, and that's not a good thing. I wasn't happy with that. But there you go. There's the hole in the front this side and the hole in the other side. And that's the hole where I put that hook through. And on that hook, I use that hook with a nipple bottle water, which I put down in the description, so you can see how to make a small water bottle. But that's the ending product. And it obviously, before you caulk it and tape it, you want to test the light and make sure the light works. I'm not sure if I said that earlier. But like I say, I took this out and put it on its end with the electrical part obviously up and the bottom part down, and hosed it out and wiped it down clean and put the chickens back in it. I had taken them out to clean it and put them in a little box, and it worked out quite well. The dimmer switch works so that you can regulate the heat. You have to have a thermometer or something, so you obviously know what the heat is on the inside. But just be sure that when you're drilling the holes, you don't push too hard. You can hang your water, put it in the bottom however you like it. And that third dowel, that is the top. It's an old wood carrier. And that's the wood carrier. Yeah, it didn't work very well, right? But that handle, I just bent down and rested it on top of the electrical box, and the other end of that piece of metal, which is very thick and heavy, is just sitting on the dowel. Then on the open part, I just put a piece of cardboard over it. It worked fine. The chickens got warm. In fact, I had to adjust the light to make it cooler in there, and it was only, I think, 60 degrees, 63, 4 degrees in the room I kept them in. It worked great. They stay underneath that pan. Plus, you can spray water on, use a little spray bottle to spray water on the top of that pan to make sure you have the right humidity. That's very important, definitely within the first week, that you keep the humidity proper inside of there, because if they get too dried out, their feathers and skin will have problems. I mean, that's what I've heard. I just do because that's what I've been told. Never had a problem, but anyway, that's what you've got. And you've got happy little chickens inside of your little brooder. And when you pack up the brooder and it's done, you just put the stuff inside. You could use it as a storage for other chicken items. Depending on how often you're going to use it, you could use it a lot or use it a little. I just happened to use it once. It worked out great. I hope you have fun and good luck. Bye.